David, what's going on, man? I know we've had you on the podcast before, but it's been a little while. So I appreciate you coming back on, sharing your story again. Before we get into it, if people didn't hear the last episode or they don't know much about you, can you give us a little background?
Yeah. Well, I joined the Marine Corps in '08 out of high school. Didn't know what to do. 2015, I still trying to figure out what to do with my life, and somehow stumbled into real estate, started buying houses, and went well enough that when I guess by 2021, I just kind of decided I didn't need to re-enlist anymore. So here we are, right? I started in 2018. Along the journey, I started this platform documenting my journey through real estate investing, and somewhere in there, that's where we got connected. I don't actually remember if I connected you to John or John connected me to you, and then we all connected in the OC world. And but yeah, so I mean, the long story short, right, is Marine, started buying houses, then started talking about it to help other service members and vets. Really, I think part of that is just that I got frustrated with how much misinformation there was floating around in the world about the VA loan and just military benefits in general. And this whole mentality service members have about like, oh, I don't get paid enough. And it's like, well, yeah, kind of. But your benefits are incredible. And so like, really, it's like, it's a moot point, right? Like we do fine. And so let me just go online and talk about it and try to help people figure all that mess out for themselves so they can set themselves up for success. And that's what I do now.
Nice. Yeah, I mean, it's inspiring to see you how big of a platform you built and been able to do it. Obviously, when you're actually working and active duty, and so let's talk a little bit about that. How like and let's talk about mindset shift. So I used to be a fireman and I left, but there's a lot of just like a organization, corporation, you get a department or like the military, everybody kind of sets in what there's nothing wrong with that. Serving a country is amazing. It's it's very honorable, and especially anything else that you do within the W-2 world. But some people get set into this mindset of like, hey, I can't do anything outside of this, and this is what I'm going to do for the next 30 to 40 years. Or how could you do any more other than just this? So let's talk a little bit about that, because I think that's super interesting, especially in the past 5 years, I would say.
Yeah, it was an interesting journey for sure. I agree. It's interesting to watch people get sucked into the W-2 space of like, well, and it's even weirder in the military because people will retire from the military and then jump into a government contracting job. It's like the running joke that you like retire from the military and then you land a government contracting job and do another, basically military retirement to have two pensions, which don't get me wrong, nothing wrong. Like you got two government pensions and medical, disability and like you're living all right. But
Yeah.
it's also you're 60 years old by the time you start collecting that second pension and you're living all right, but are you able to enjoy it? I don't know. Maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe if you took enough supplements to stay young. I don't know. But most people would say that 60 years old, if you spent 20 of that in the military, you probably feel pretty old. So I don't know how rough on the body being a firefighter is. I'm sure it's probably
rough, yeah.
probably pretty similar to being in the military. So
yeah, it's not easy, dude. You're exactly right. It's different if you sit at a desk job for 30 years. Not saying they don't work hard. They just work hard at less physical things that they're doing. But, the military, firefighting, police, public service, you really run into this where it beats up your body and puts you into a situation where, if you hit, when you do hit 60, it seems like you're 75 because you spend so much time, really beating your body up.
Yeah, I got a friend who's I don't know the official term. Was it flame jumper? Is that what they call them? With the nut jobs who like get dropped off behind forest fires. And she's headquartered out of like LA, and she's a freaking stud. But I'm like, man, one of these days that's gonna catch up. I feel like
Yeah, it's brutal. It's
Yeah.
it's it's tough for sure.
Oh my gosh. But yeah, so then, there's this whole like mentality of just like, I mean, it was not easy to, for sure, like working, like waking up super early to try to get stuff done, or staying up late at night, or working weekends, and friends are, playing Call of Duty, or just getting drunk, or whatever. Like there's definitely some downsides. And I'm probably a little bit of a self-proclaimed workaholic here and there, but I also really love what I do, and long term, like I'm making an impact, and I'm getting to enjoy some of the fruits of my labor now. And I still work a lot, but I'm doing what I want. I'm not working for anybody, so it's a whole different ball game. But it took a little bit to get into the mentality of like being okay with the idea that I wasn't going to be a Marine forever, right? And wasn't going to do 20 years, because that was kind of the game plan for a while. It's an odd, I don't know, it's an odd conundrum trying to decide that, especially because like getting out of the Marine Corps at 13 years, which is where I was, like everybody is telling you that you're making a mistake. I mean, the only people who were supportive, or even like okay with the idea of me exiting the military were, like mentors who were like abundance guys, right? Like Brandon Turner's, or Doug Nordman's, or like people who were, super well off, and we're just like, well, how much money can you make in the next 7 years? Like, if you have all your time back. Everybody in the military, everybody in my like family, everybody who is views like safety, security, pension, like the normal standard American ideology is like, whoa, buddy, whoa.
Yeah.
What are you smoking over there? No. Get back in line. What are you doing?
Yeah.
So it's a very odd conundrum, all that stuff that goes on in your head.
Yeah, well, you speak on, what I just, when I left, what I went through is, for one, identity crisis, not like knowing. For me, it was, okay, I'm not Peter and, the fireman, and then also the guy that side hustles. What am I? Am I the guy that used to be that? Am I the guy, to the people, especially that I worked with, am I the guy that is basically written off as a fireman ever? Is it, all these things, your mind really can play tricks on you. So that, and then, like you said, people just think you're, nuts, because it's like, I left a pension, and I'm able to get some of it, a portion of it, but not to what the extent is of what I would have been able to get if I spent the, 30 plus years there at that job. And so, you get placed just like a W-2 employee, and I'm not, knocking them, but you get placed in this mindset where it's like, this is the best thing ever. And I feel like people sell you down the river where, you think everything's going to be really good and everything else, but then, like we talked about, like it really beats up your body. And how long, you have a certain amount of, lifespan that you can actually be productive and or, be physically fit. So that really shortens that gap too.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree. You got to enjoy it while you can, for sure. And I mean, that was, I think, the biggest part for me in the decision making factors or whatever was it really boiled down to fulfillment. Like I love a lot of stuff about the Marine Corps, but at a certain point, it just wasn't scratching the itch anymore. It was, and it wasn't really about the money. I mean, don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
At some points, there were times where I noticed towards the end at work, like I'd be getting told, do this or do that, and I was just thinking, like, man, like this is not worth any more of the money that I'm getting paid. Not because I wasn't getting paid enough, but because I'm was now getting paid 2 or 3 times that elsewhere, uh, which just kind of made it like, there becomes a point where like when you're standing in front of your boss and they're griping about something that you don't believe is important or wrong and you disagree with, which would fundamentally be an issue anyway in your head, because you're like, this is BS. Like, can we
Yeah.
move on? But now in the back of your head, it's like, I make 3 times what this dude makes, or as much or more, in the 5 hours or 2 hours that I worked this morning, whatever. Um, that sounds a little egotistical. It's not quite that, but like there becomes a point where you're just like, I'm making more money not being here than I am being here.
Yeah.
To not put up with this. It's like, whatever. But the real kicker for me was when it was like, dude, I hadn't left the country in like 10 years. And I'm like, I joined the Marine Corps for the travel and adventure. The first 4 years I was in, I saw 13 countries. I went to a combat deployment. I'm getting shot at. I'm driving over spicy road bumps that go boom, and all these like exciting things. I'm living like all of the adventures, right? And it is just wild. And then like wars died down, funding dries up. Things start becoming a little bit more political in the military, and a little bit more PC, and you can't do this, you can't say that, you can't go here, you can't do that. Oh, we don't want to shoot on the ranges often, and you get promoted, and then you become a desk jockey. You get promoted again, you become more of a desk jockey. Then you get really good at your job, so they send the other guy out on the deployment or the training op because you work at a 3-star general command, and so they send not both of us were really good at our job, but they send the one who's a little bit more articulate, stays in the office, and the one who's a little bit less of a filter goes out. So they're like, you guys are both studs, but Dave, you're staying in the office because this guy, he's probably not the one that we want around if the generals, if we had to choose, sorry. And I'm like, oh, son of a bitch. I should I need to swear more. And so like, it just got to a point where I'm like, this is just crap. Like, I don't even have windows in my office. Like, it is time to move on, And that was like the big kicker for me. It wasn't fulfilling anymore. I'm like, man, if they would just send me places and do things, like, I probably would have stayed in. I probably would have re-enlisted again. And who knows what would have happened, but it just wasn't it anymore for me. It wasn't scratching the itch. So,
Yeah, I mean, you make a valid point with not being fulfilled, and that was what I felt too. But also, it's kind of crazy. I was driving the other day, and this goes to what your point is, or a little bit of what your point is like sometimes even the craziest scenarios get a little monotonous, and I don't mean you get lackadaisical, but like for me, going on normal everyday traffic accidents just kind of got mundane. Not saying that I'm minimizing what people went through in the accident, but it's like, okay, I know this is pretty repetitive, so I want to get out and do something else challenged mentally and stuff like that. So it's funny how when you do talk to people, you're like, oh, you're in the military, you got to do all this, shoot all these guns and everything else, which is and see all these different countries, and then certain aspects of the job, not going out there to battle or anything like that, or wars or anything else, but certain things got mundane, and you're like, this isn't, like you said, not scratching the itch.
Yeah. I mean, how many times can you see, a car hit an inanimate object and the cell phone on the dash, and then be like, I wasn't on my phone, before you're just like, really, dude? Like, the phone had to have been held up here somewhere to end up on the dash. Like, come on.
Yeah.
It's like, no, I promise. It was totally down here. It was hands free. Like, yeah, I get it. That's exactly, it must have hopped out of the cup holder and ended up in the windshield. And you were staring straight ahead, and that's how you ran into the building. Yeah. Makes sense. Got it. Yeah.
Yeah.
I can
it's
only imagine the stuff you guys deal with.
No, it's crazy. So, all right. So you transitioned, but before you transitioned, before you got out of the military, you were able to build up, like you said, waking up early, not doing as many fun things, outside of the military as, other people were, especially your age, and entertainment and everything else. You were really focused on building up, a brand outside of it, and then also building up, an income stream. How did you go about that successfully? Because there's a lot of people that do it unsuccessfully, or people that kind of do it for a year and then they're out of it because they don't have any more juice.
I think you just answered your question. I didn't stop. That was
Yeah.
it. I mean, I didn't really know what I was doing at the first. I mean, I read some books, I did some things, I did some hashtags, I shared stuff, I did things. I mean, but the bottom line is that I just stayed consistent. I mean, if you look at my YouTube channel, there's probably 800 videos on there. There's, over 1,000 Instagram posts. There's, I mean, good Lord knows what I've done in Facebook, TikTok, everything else. But I mean, that right there, 800 videos, even if every one of those is, 1 minute video, you can assume there's probably 5 minutes of upload time. I mean, all in probably 10 minutes of video. That's what, 8,000 minutes of whatever. But I would imagine the average video time on that is probably hovering closer to like 10 minutes, 8 to 10 minutes.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of shorts now
Yeah.
recently, but there's also 200 episodes that are 40 plus minutes that are podcasts. So 200 videos are podcasts, and then at least 300 of those are, the 8 to 15 minute, like normal long form videos, which then have another 20 to 30 minutes of editing behind them. And, so I mean, let's call it half hour to an hour average per video. I mean, it's a lot of time spent in there, but then you've got the research and the listening to the audience feedback and whatever questions they're asking. That was what I was going after. But a lot of it is evergreen stuff. And that's, I think, a big key for me, is that I would listen to what people were asking. And if they asked the same questions, like if different people asked me the same questions, I would take a note, and that would be kind of the content I went after, answering those questions. And then I would just kind of think through, like, okay, if I'm trying to reach this person, what kind of questions is that person asking? So if I'm a brand new service member and I'm just like, man, I want to buy a car, like, what questions is that knucklehead asking? All right, well, whatever. Or if I'm a brand new real estate investor, how do I find my first off market deal? What questions is that guy asking? And then whatever those questions are that I come up with, I write videos that answer it. So how do I find a list of off market properties? How do I write letters? What's the best company for sending letters to find off market properties? What's the, and then you find these companies that exist. So like PropStream or REI Sift or whatever. What is this company? Review of this, whatever those, you just kind of go down the rabbit hole. You make these different videos that follow those rabbit holes. And then, YouTube is like Google. It's owned by Google. So it's the second largest search engine in the world. And what happens is, like, well, those are real examples. Like if you were to type in, what is REI Sift or REI Sift review, one of those, I would actually pop up, I believe, above their company as the video on YouTube recommended on Google right now. And so still to this day, 2 years after the video is published, YouTube is recommending my video to anybody researching that company, which just slowly kicks, and people just find me. And so I've got videos like that. Like, what is the thrift savings plan? What is the VA loan? How do you use the VA loan for this? How do you do, whatever? And so that's just kind of like over time, even if it's only 5 people a month who subscribe from watching that, if you got 100 videos, slowly over time, it went from 50 people a month subscribed to 100 people a month. Now we're at like 580, I think, this month subscribed. And then just kind of snowballs. It's just word of mouth after that. And
yeah. I mean, like you said, it's just repetition and it's consistency. You see a lot of these, YouTubers or social media influencers that get, big pretty quickly, and either one of two things: they've done a lot of short or long-term content prior to this, either on a different platform or just maybe on, podcasting, and then they were able to create a brand there and then switch over to Instagram or TikTok and convert the fans that were over there on their podcast over to that platform, whatever it is. So, and then the other ones that you look at, You look, there's, 1.500, 1.5K on, let's say, YouTube, that they've actually done 1,500 videos. And like you said, there's thousands of hours, that they put forth, and then really fine tune those videos to maybe the last like 500 are really hitting, but the first 1,000, the first 800 were just nothing.
Yep.
So yeah, that's huge. That consistency, that compounding effect, really gets you to the next level. And a lot of people stop in the middle, and they don't wait till, not the end, but they don't wait to build it up because they feel like they're not doing it right.
Yeah. And it's interesting. People try so hard, I think, sometimes to go viral or to get a, big media, whatever. And there's not to say that there's anything wrong with not having a presence, and there's plenty of people who have done very well and had no presence online. But I've been hit up by people or had, books that I've read or authors that I really like. And then I go to like have an opportunity to speak or something, and they're like, I'll advertise you to my YouTube channel. And I go to their YouTube channel, and it's like 1,200 subscribers and like 40 videos and like no engagement. And I'm like, maybe they have another channel. Nope, that's it. I'm like, weird. And there's not necessarily anything wrong with that, but it doesn't really do a whole lot for me on the value add when it's like, yeah, it's your name, but like nobody's watching it. So, whereas like I haven't really ever gone viral.
Mm-hmm.
But when that day happens, right? Because I'm starting to get reached out to by like I've got to fill out all these questions, but I've got my first like legitimate military magazine doing an interview on me this month.
Nice.
And so like slowly starting to get some actual like bigger press opportunities coming in. And when those types of things happen more and more, and people read it and they're like, oh, this is interesting. Who's this guy? Let me check him out. When they end up on my page, they're going to see 60,000 people on Facebook, 100,000 people on TikTok, 800 videos on YouTube, podcasts with this, like, and the podcast has like Grant Cardone, Robert Kiyosaki, Brandon Turner, like, somewhat known guests floating around. And so I had someone I knew at a FinCon convention once say something like that. There was this girl, she went viral, and her whole presentation was like, one viral video blew up my entire business in like a good way. And not
not the bad way.
Blew up, not torpedo, whatever.
Yeah.
You guys know what I'm saying. And her whole premise was, it wasn't that the video did it. It was that she'd been consistent for so long that when one video just happened to get picked up by the algorithm, people stayed because of how much content she had in the background. And so her point was like, don't just spend all your time trying to go viral on one video. Like, just produce quality content. And eventually, like, when that happens, it won't matter what, if the rest of it hadn't taken off. It's like, that's a really good point.
Yeah. No, that's good. Because like she said, and you just reiterated, she was able to go viral on one video, but then she had so much other stuff to back it up. You don't see, unless, you're The Rock, you don't see someone starting a YouTube channel, the first video just blows up, you don't see that. You see people that are, repetitive and consistent, and then incrementally getting better and better.
Yeah, absolutely agree.
So let's go back to your story. In military, started buying properties, right? What'd you start with? And then when you left in 21, where were you kind of at on the spectrum of purchases there? So like, did you start at single families and go up to multifamily? How does that look?
Yeah, I started with a duplex. So I did the old house hack, live in one half, rent the other. And then my next purchase was technically a raw piece of 5 acres that was attached to the back half of our primary, or my wife's primary. But the next actual investment was 10 unit. And then bought a 40 unit, which was on a lease option. It was a big old mess. Ended up in like a 4.5 year lawsuit, and it's on Bigger Pockets show, I think like 793 or something like that. I don't know. It's on. I'll give it to you so you can link it to the show notes. But it ended up on the big mess. Basically, the guy, it was a lease option scam where like we bought the thing and then like all kinds of fraud.
Oh.
And like 4 months later, I was like, dude, like just give me the down payment back. Like this is a load of hooey. And he's like, nope, the down payment was non-refundable. And I'm like, yeah, but I gave you the down payment for a Corvette and you handed me the keys to a Civic. This is that's not how this works. And 4.5 years later, we got all our money back plus interest. So it was a nightmare, but whatever, worked out. We sued on 4 counts and we won 3 of them, and the 4th got thrown out because one of the other counts negated it. So and they was like fraud and all kinds of other stuff.
I would assume he has probably a bunch of other stuff racked up. It wasn't just your deal that sent him over the edge, right?
So there were actually, like, he'd done this a few other times, but no one else sued him.
Okay.
They all just kind of bit the bullet. And I don't know if they were just all like well off enough to just not care about losing 6 figures, or if they just weren't stubborn like my crusty ass is. But I was willing to put up with it. So yeah, we had 100 and by all things said and done, I think we had like 183,000. I don't know. The settlement, we got a check for, they settled at 220. The judgment was a little bit higher than that, but they settled at 220, and just to pay it like immediately. And so whatever. And then anyway, but during that whole process, we were still buying, and I was wholesaling. I was doing some flipping. I was doing some burrs. I was doing whatever. And so by the time I got out in 21, it's actually still going through that lawsuit. And on top of that, had a 40-unit hotel, a 23-unit apartment, a 15-unit apartment, a whole bunch, I don't know, a bunch of random 1 to 4 unit properties somewhere in the middle of like 10 to 20 of them. Okay. And then I still don't know how many I have because I've sold a bunch, and then I bought some, and then I sold some more. I don't know. I'm somewhere in the middle of like 5 to 15 of them now. Okay. And I've kind of been like, just basically anything that's not been renovated in the last 24 months and is under 5 units, I've sold. And then we still have the hotel, the 2 apartments, and have since purchased a 28-unit apartment, or a 28-unit RV pad or RV park, and then sold the 10-unit. I think that's kind of, a lot of things have changed over the last 6 months. So I almost have to like pull up my little spreadsheet and just be like,
well, commercial has been crazy in the last, 12 to 18 months. So you went, basically single family, small multi, and then started bumping up. So is your main focus now all commercial, and is it multifamily, or is it just commercial? What does it look like?
Yeah. So I'm a mess. I'm not like most of the people that you would ask these questions to. Because my answer is just that I'm buy and hold. And essentially if I can hold the thing and it makes sense, I'll buy it. And so if it's a house or a storage unit or anywhere in between, and I can get it for the right terms, I'm in. That being said, I am definitely leaning away from residential, not for any other reason than operations. Even with a property manager, I find myself being more involved in residential stuff than the bigger stuff, because like with the RV park, for example, my buddy Marty is the ops guy, and he does everything. And like, I have almost no involvement in that at all. And then with the apartments, there's a little bit more involvement because there is a property manager, but still not a whole lot. The hotel, tons of involvement because it's a hospitality business. And so we're actually looking to sell it just because it's way more involved. But the properties, it's like on the residential side, like you don't really run into a whole lot of issues with like homeless people trying to break into a hotel, but you sure as heck do with like a single family. It is, I don't know if there's like Tinder for vacant houses, but they know. They
Yeah.
have gaydar for vacant houses. Like they know.
Yeah,
They
they know.
know when someone moves out of that freaking house. And if you're not there, game over. Like, and I lost a fourplex to 15 homeless. Like,
Really?
if you've ever had to, like, I've never had to deal with an eviction process myself
Yeah.
until I had this fourplex. And my property manager was like, we've been to court 5 times, and 5 different Jane Does have shown up for this house. Please just join us. And I showed up and like just showed up with the judge and was like, look, dude, like, I don't care what we need to do.
Yeah.
I have no tenants. And all the tenants were like, the owner said I could. And so I just showed up and was like, there's not a single tenant in that property. And I have not allowed anybody on the property. Not one of these homeless Jane or Johns has been allowed in the property, and they can all go to hell. So please just evict all of these Jane John Does and all future Jane John Does so that I can move on with my life and get rid of this house.
Yeah.
And, you don't really run into that with like
No.
massive, projects, at least not on the same issues.
Yeah, well, I think if you got a single family residence, there's not as depending on where it is, if it's in a city that's not that great, you may have a lot more homeless people that are, searching out some cover. And if and there's really no neighbors that are knocking on the door saying, "Hey, do you normally live here?" Unless like it's a bedroom community and everybody knows each other. On the flip side, if you have a multifamily, excluding your fourplex, if you have a multifamily, usually those people kind of know who's who. So if it's like one unit's vacant, then all of a sudden they have someone living there and they don't look right and they don't look like they actually fit, then yeah, those questions start flying. And then two, on the hotel, obviously it's more of an active property. So there's a lot of, like you said, hospitality. There's, managers walking around, there's valet, there's, whatever class it is. And those people will scare away anybody else that's looking to, bed down for the night.
Yeah. Yep. That's the hope, right? So
yeah.
So I'm trying to move into some more like kind of passive-ish type of investments like that. Yeah.
Okay. And so give us, your take on, I'm in the military and I'm looking to exit in 5 years. Don't have a side hustle, but what would you recommend I get into? Because you know this so well because you did it. Give me 1 to 2 examples of like what I could get into and still have the ability to be competent at my job and, show up on time and everything else.
Yeah, I think the first thing is, if you're not at least contributing enough to your thrift savings plan to reap the government's matching contribution, then you're a nincompoop, and you should be, because there's nowhere else where you're going to get if you contribute 5%, the government will match 5. Like, show me another investment where the government is going to guarantee you 100% ROI on day one. And no one's been able to, like, you're not going to beat that. Like, you could literally lose your principal and still be at equal. Like, you can't beat it. And it's tax advantage. So I don't care what your thoughts are on the stock market. Put at least the 5% in. I would say a little bit more, but I like index funds personally. Like, as much as I love real estate, you don't get any more passive than index funds. Mm-hmm. So I would say at least do that piece. I'm a huge fan if you have the ability to use the VA loan to house hack. That's like my go-to, man. Like, there is no better loan out there than the VA loan. Zero down, no PMI, better interest rates, better everything. No credit requirements, no DTI requirements. Like, there's obviously lender overlays for all that stuff. But John closed a 78% back end DTI in Venice Beach on a $1.93 million duplex. And the guy is basically living for free 1 street over, like 1 street inboard from Muscle Beach. Like, you can't, and zero down on an active duty guy. Like, you can't beat that.
No.
And by the way, that was in 2020. And so, you can only imagine what his equity looks like right now.
Oh yeah.
So, he's doing just fine. So I love that idea. Like you use the VA loan, you buy a duplex or a fourplex, or just a 5-bedroom house, and you rent all the other bedrooms out to people. And then you can rinse and repeat when you go to your next duty station. Those are both really good ideas. On top of that, I think, just setting yourself up for, like, use your tuition assistance while you're in, get some free, if you don't know what you want to do, then use some of your tuition assistance and work on a degree. I'm not huge on college, but if you have an idea for like a high paying job that you can earn a degree in for free while you're in, like, I don't know, cyber or tech or something that, even if it's not a degree, but you just take like random classes in marketing or cyber or something that you can use as a skill set. Like, why not take the free education stuff,
For sure.
I think all that's huge.
Yes. Yeah, that helps out a lot. Okay. And do you suggest someone gets into buying a let's say house wherever they're stationed, and if they're moving a couple of places, buy a house in those locations? I know I've heard two different sides of it. No, because they're going to be scattered all over the United States, and then some people are yes, because you're going to have obviously built equity and everything else once when you continue to move.
Yeah, I'm in the camp of the answer that everybody loves, which is it depends. And so I would say yes, as long as that house makes sense. If you can make the argument to me for that house on its own, then I would say yes. And so what I mean by that is, like, I agree with the argument of buying a house at every duty station fundamentally, but I don't believe it without exception. And so people get wrapped up in that, like, you got to buy a house at every duty station. It's the greatest idea. Yeah, except that, like, sometimes what happens is service members take that advice and they're like, they take it as buying a primary residence at every duty station and like a forever home. And so, no, these guys or girls will be like, it's got to be a gated community with like a pool and like this 3-bed, 2-bath house that me, my wife, and my kid, they all have to have their own bedroom. And it's like, cool, but like, your housing allowance was $3,000, your mortgage is $3,000, so by utilities you're at $35,000. You're coming out of pocket to live in this thing. When you rent it, it's going to be negative, and you're only going to be there for 2 years, so you're probably not going to have any equity because you used a 0-down mortgage. So you're not really going to be able to sell. You're not really going to be able to rent. You're not really going to save any money by buying. Now you're kind of stuck.
Yeah.
Hope it works out for you long term if you can hold on to it. Now you're moving to another location. If you repeat that, like, hope you timed the market decently, because now you're literally just hoping you can hold on long enough for this strategy to work out. Whereas if you buy a house that's outdated and you update it a little bit, or you use a VA renovation loan, or you buy a fourplex where you're living for free or close to it, or a 5-bedroom and you rent bedrooms out, so you're living for free or close to it, and you play the game of, like, this isn't my forever home, unless you plan on living there forever, then maybe like you're going to come back there. But this isn't my forever home, but I'm buying it as an investment once I move out, and it's going to cash flow, and like, you're able to save your $3,000 housing allowance or $2,500 of it, and you could save that to reinvest and build your cash reserves, and then you move to the next one, and now you're cash flowing, and you move to the next one, and then you rinse and repeat. Now you're saving $4,000 a month, and then you're saving $5,000 by the time you move to the next one, and now you've got 3 houses paying you. Like, there's the exact same strategy, 2 completely different outcomes. Only real variable is how you bought the houses.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I love the idea. It's just, I almost hate to say, did you let the wife buy the house or the husband? And I say that jokingly, but it's someone's gonna get mad about that. What I mean is, did you let the emotions buy the house or the logic buy the house? And realistically, that could be husband or wife, but generally, when the wife is the one doing the thinking, it's the more emotional decision. And when the husband's like, I don't care if it's in the school district, this one makes money,
Yeah, no, I agree. It's, if it's an emotional purchase and it's in an area that may not have, significant appreciation. One I'm thinking about is in, California, Southern California, and it's, the appreciation there outside of, what the short-term rental run did in, like, the last couple of years. It wasn't going to do, it's not really going to do much. The appreciation is going to be outside of normal Southern California. The appreciation was like 3 to 5%. A year. And, if you look at the beach cities of California, they're significantly more. So you really got to know that too, because if you get stuck in a position where you actually need to sell because maybe, like, you took out some student loans after because you want to go a different route, all this other stuff can really trap you in a scenario that you're either losing money on it or, you're losing money once you sell it. And, then all of a sudden it doesn't make sense at all. So you shouldn't have bought it in the first place. And I agree with you. So, okay, fast forward. I know we're coming up here on time, but fast forward to you exiting. Is there any advice that you can give to people that are in the military now, outside of those things that you gave us, that you can give them on being successful for early exit?
And I think just understand that shit's gonna hit the fan. I think the biggest thing is, like, the thing that, all right, you know what, you mentioned it actually already on the show. So, sir, every single service member struggles with this, and you mentioned it, alluded to it as a coming out of being a firefighter. Every single service member struggles with, when they leave the military, losing their identity and a sense of purpose, no matter what. And I don't care who you talk to. If they tell you otherwise, then you just don't know them well enough. Because I have had more people that I've talked to on the phone at the end of that first year, in that first 6 months, at the year and a half mark. I mean, I've had grown ass men in tears a year after exiting the military on the phone with me talking about this. And dudes who did like 15 years, like combat vets, guys with Purple Hearts, guys with, like, just dudes that you would never think would have, and guys who, like me, left because they were already set up for life out of the military, like not struggling financially. One of the guys I'm thinking of was and is much better off than I am. I mean, he had a 7-figure year the year before. He was like, it's time to exit, like 7-figure net, in his pocket, and was like, all right, I'm done. And so I would just say, like, understand that that's going to be the hardest part, I think, of exiting the military is losing that identity piece, and like the sense of purpose. And so trying to figure out kind of what that sense of purpose is, and working on finding your purpose is okay to have as a sense of purpose. Like, you don't have to have all the answers, but like sitting around moping, going, oh, woe was me, I don't know what my purpose is not the answer. Like, don't dwell in it. And not knowing who Dave is anymore is not the answer. Like, you need to know who Dave is as Dave, not Dave the Marine, and not Dave the military millionaire or whatever. Like, who's Dave? Especially if you're going somewhere that's not around a big military installation, and you're not going to be near all your military buddies anymore, because there's been some weird times, so I think, like, probably the most important thing to relay, all these vets, struggle with mental issues, suicide, whatever. And I think it all comes back to that. So it's like, dude, just, everyone says, like, oh, don't be afraid to pick up the phone and talk. Like, that's great and all, but like, just find a group of people, if you're a man, dudes, if you're a chick, women, whatever, but like, find a group of dudes that you can just be like, bro, like, I need to get the hell outside. Like, let's go out in the sun and go walk and just whatever, like play football, like, go walk outside, go for a hike, go whatever, like, get out in the sun and just hang out and like have fun and just get out of the house. Because it's going to hit you at some point. Like, at some point, like I had a moment probably like 2 months ago. It was the weirdest thing. I showed up to my kid's baseball game, and it's like his first like baseball game, and like it was at this crappy the stadium wasn't anyway. It's my 6-year-old, and it's like this orange picket fence, like construction fence that they haven't finished building. Anyway, there's nowhere for us to sit or stand, so I'm like standing like outside of the outfield because there's like nowhere to be, and like it was like they started the game like 20. I showed up 15 minutes early. The game already started, and my wife was like over in the dugout helping because it started so early. The coach wasn't even there, and I'm like. So I couldn't like hang out with her. Like there was literally no one there that I knew because I don't really know a lot of the other parents because I didn't grow up in that town. I'm not from here. And I'm just like standing in the outfield, and I'm like, I can barely see my kid because he's on the other side of the field. And I just felt like completely alone and isolated. And it was this weird, like, I'm like, here I am with like, hundreds of thousands of people online that follow me and an incredible network of friends. I could pick up the phone, I could call anybody, and I could talk to anybody right now.
Mm-hmm.
But there's not a single person that I served with that I could be like, hey, let's go grab a beer, that lives within 3 hours of me that I know of. It's a weird feeling, and it's really hard to deal with. It was a really, really weird moment. And it wasn't like I was, wasn't in too bad a spot. But I mean, I told my wife after, I was like, dude, like, yeah. So anyway, all that being said, like, that's what I would say. You prepare yourself for that piece. Like that's the hurdle. Like make sure you've got some strong relationships and some people you can touch base with.
Yeah. I mean, I think, it's a struggle, dude. It's not easy. And I think with so much stuff that goes on these days and what you see on, the news and social media and stuff like that, you can, really get inside your own head even more than maybe 15, 20 years ago. But if you don't have a good solid support system like your wife or your family, or like a brother or sister that are, local, you need to have that before you leave, I would suggest, because, my wife was very instrumental. And, when I left, being, and still is, just being very, considerate to, how hard it is. It's like, it's a tough move. Doesn't matter if you've been at, a Microsoft for 20 years, you get kind of set in your ways. And then also experiences with, going to work with David every day and then not see him anymore, and knowing that, they may think of you differently. You get, like I said earlier, tricks, your mind plays tricks on you. So you all of a sudden think like, and not being close to them, most of the guys that I worked with, they're not in my same county that I live. So they're, an hour away, and typically, they're either stuck at work or, when they are home, they're kind of unplugged and, completely invested with their families, which I completely understand that. So it's tougher to get around them. But I do have the ability, on that note, is to pick up the phone at times and call them and have discussions, because it's like, I thought when I left, I'm like, they're not even going to talk to me. You know what I mean? They're not even going to like have a conversation with me because they think I'm a, sellout. And that was hard for me because I'm like, can't believe it. But then once I left, more of them, now I talk to like 2 of them a week, depending on who it is and everything else, and talk to them about, how everything's going. And I still do deals and transactions with guys that I, worked with there. And I feel like I've gotten more phone calls about real estate after I left the fire department than I did, even conversations when I was there, which is nice too, which is cool to see. But yeah, you got to have that support system, because it's not easy. It's very, it's trying for your mind and, physically to realize like, hey, you're not showing up to do this work. You're showing up to do some other work.
Yeah.
So
yeah, it's a whole different ball game.
Yeah, man. I appreciate you being vulnerable about that. It's tough, and people need to hear it, because some people may think like, dude, David, Peter, or whoever else, they're selling all these homes or doing all these deals, and it's the same thing as like the reverse. Yeah, man, you're driving tanks every day and you're doing all this. Like, it's that optics that people, for one, see from the exterior, but don't really know what the interior looks like. Yeah. So thanks, dude. Well, I usually ask a few last questions, but I want you to talk about your book. I know we spoke about it before on the last podcast, but plug that, and then where can people find out about you?
Well, we got two now.
Oh, nice. All right.
We got the No BS Guide to Military Life, which is everything I wish I'd known when I first joined the military. And then recently we got the Military Millionaire Planner. Basically I just combined a whole bunch of planners that I liked because I was like, each one of these is missing something. And so I made my own. All of them, though, were missing one thing. They all had one thing they were missing: a 4 a.m. start time. None of them started before 6, and I was like, this is bullshit. Oh, you guys, no one reads the Miracle Morning, apparently. So
come on.
It's funny because that's like the one thing that I've probably gotten commented on the most is people being like, oh, finally a start time that works for me. And I'm like, yeah, there we go. Service members, we have no lives. Way too early.
Starting when everybody's sleeping.
That's ridiculous. We are insomniacs by trade, apparently. Yeah, so I mean, the easiest way to get a hold of me, oh, you'll love this. I just bought this URL not too long ago. If you go to thebestpodcastguest.com, you can actually download a free PDF of that book, and you can find all my social medias there. But yeah, thebestpodcastguest.com is the easiest landing page for all that stuff.
Oh yeah, dude, it's right there. That's there you go. Got your picture too, looking stylish.
I know, I'm fancy.
Yeah. Well, David, dude, and there's all your links too. So it's got Instagram, LinkedIn, TikTok, Twitter, everything else.
OnlyFans.
Yeah, OnlyFans too. I mean, that was the last one that I was going to get to.
All the feet pics.
Yeah. Well, dude, I appreciate it. I know we didn't talk about specifics on each deal, which is fine because this is good for people that are especially, seeing you from afar and knowing that, even getting out, there's, some challenges, not, maybe business wise, but just challenges mentally to get past a certain, stigma. And I appreciate, you coming on and speaking about that.
Yeah. Anytime, brother. I appreciate it. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah. Cool, man. We'll get this up, and thanks so much for everybody listening.